It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
But I've come across a few things here that are really quite shocking to me. I had no idea that these celebrities were being paid to appear at these events by the Harris campaign. Harris campaign, New York Post writes, gave Oprah Winfrey $1 million. Now, she's a billionaire, like she needs $1 million of donors' money, and paid other celebs to appear with her in doomed presidential bid. By Michael Lee, Fox News, actually. Vice President Kamala Harris paid Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions $1 million, just one example of millions the campaign spent on various entertainers during the vice president's failed bid for president. Did you know this, folks? I didn't know it. Harris campaign paid $1 million to her, according to the report in the Washington Examiner on October 15th, coming after a star-studded town hall that Winfrey hosted for the vice president in September. She also appeared at Harris's final rally in Philadelphia on the eve of election. And the funny thing is, many of these entertainers actually cost them votes. We're going to have at the bottom of this hour the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, to give us an update on what's taking place in the House. We're going to have in hour 3, the top of the hour, 8 p.m., our buddy Stephen A. Smith, who I've been watching, has been very articulate about much of this. We're voting for values and integrity, Winfrey said at the rally. We're voting for healing over hate. But Winfrey wasn't the only star the Harris campaign spent money on, with a Washington Examiner report also revealing the campaign spent big on Call Her Daddy podcast. Mr. Producer, could you imagine us being paid to bring people on here? I actually think it's illegal for radio. A source familiar with the matter told the Washington Examiner that the Harris campaign spent 6 figures on building a set for Harris's appearance on the popular Call Her Daddy podcast with host Alex Cooper. Of course, I don't know anything about it. The Examiner wrote, the interview came out in October, was reportedly filmed in a hotel room in Washington. She refused to travel to where these podcasters are, like Rogan and so forth. She just wouldn't do it. 6 figures on building a set. 6 figures in a hotel room. The campaign also spent $20 million on swing state concerts on the eve of the election, according to a report in the New York Post, a sum that could have been more if a planned performance by Alanis Morissette had not been scrapped. I just wonder if the donors think this is okay. The campaign had 7 swing state concerts on Monday, the report noted, including performances by John Bon Jovi in Detroit, Christina Aguilera in Las Vegas, Katy Perry in Pittsburgh, Lady Gaga in Philadelphia, and 2 Chainz's performance at a rally 3 days before the election in Atlanta. That's pretty crazy. The Harris campaign did not immediately respond to a Fox News digital request for comment. I had no idea this was going on. I had no idea this was going on, that they're paying for these entertainers. And again, Oprah Winfrey is a billionaire. $1 million means nothing to her. Seriously. Nothing. And yet, how cheap are these people? Very principled, don't you think? Very principled, they're out there. And they're getting paid big money. It's crazy. Now, let's keep going here. Tom Homan, as you know, he's going to be the Border Czar. Proudly so. He's a fantastic guy. Fantastic. Anna Navarro is on The View. She's a moron in 2 languages. And obviously, the syndicator of The View has no intention of cleaning up that show. In other words, bringing some normal people on there who talk to the American people with respect rather than trashing them. But they have their clapping seals, and apparently that's the niche they're looking for. That's a big enough niche for them. So here's Anna Navarro. I'm just saying these people are never going to change. She's not going to change. None of them are going to change because they don't give a damn. And there's no accountability. Nobody's fired. Nobody's suspended for anything they say or the way they say it. This woman was a Republican. Now she's just a complete nut job. Cut tent, go.
I mean, it's chilling what he just said. You realize that when he says, yes, families can be deported together. Yeah. What he is saying...
Excuse me, moron. He said families together because it was asked, are families going to be split up? And he said, no, families can be deported together. Now, what is wrong with that? If a family's here illegally, they need to be deported. Because what Navarro doesn't say, or nobody else for that matter, once they're here, they're eventually going to get amnesty, and then you have chain migration. Chain migration is really the part that's going to destroy America, as it would any country. We're the only country with chain migration on the whole planet. And that simply means that if you're here, you become a citizen, then you can bring all your relatives in. And I mean distant relatives. You can bring in third cousins and all the rest of it. And I did a piece on this on Fox, and with the help of FAIR, and you could see that people can bring it up to 20, 30, 40 people. Now multiply that times 21 million. The country's over. That means the country's over because assimilation is not going to occur. This is what the Democrats want. They want the complete evisceration of the existing society. They want it replaced. They want to replace with individuals who will vote Democrat and thank them for coming here. And, of course, people will not know the American culture because the American culture will be obliterated. Where are they going to learn it? In our public schools? No. In our colleges and universities? No. On television? No. Nobody teaches it anymore. And so America will cease to exist as it is. It's just a mathematical issue. And Navarro says, oh, he's going to deport whole families. Well, what are you supposed to do? He also said today, to Tom Homan, we're going to start at the top with the worst of the worst, the Venezuelan gangs, MS-13, the criminals, the rapists, the murderers. They're going to go first. And we have Democrat governors who say, we're my dead body. And Homan's response is, if you won't do it, we'll do it for you. So the Democrats actually are okay. And this is their problem. Americans of all backgrounds, all faiths, all colors, all classes, they don't want all these people here. They don't like the way these people came here. We don't need to relitigate the election. Donald Trump just won in a massive landslide in every corner of the country. We need to execute. And if the Democrats don't like it, they need to be steamrollered. Donald Trump gets 4 years and that's it. Go ahead.
Citizens can be deported. What he is saying is if
citizens are not going to be deported, moron. Let's say there's a family and one or two are citizens and the others are not. The citizens are going to have a choice to make. Either they go home with their kids or they stay here and their kids separate. It's up to them. Folks, the people we're talking about came here voluntarily. We didn't put a gun to their head. We didn't enslave them and drag them across the border like the Russians do with the Ukrainians. We didn't do that. The people came here on their own. And the law is the law. And it's time that we have respect for the law, even when it comes to illegal aliens. They decided to come here. They decided to create these issues. We didn't. And then we're supposed to cry over this? You know how else is separated, Mr. Producer? When you arrest somebody, you put them in jail, you convict them. It's a father and mother. They're separated from their children. What about that? Shall we separate mothers and fathers from their children if they commit crimes and they're in prison? Yeah, well, that's what happens. It happens. Go ahead.
And they have U.S. citizen children or U.S. citizen spouse, or and you don't want to separate them, then let's deport the U.S. citizens. Look, Donald Trump won the electoral vote. He won. He's going to win the House.
Here's what she's lying about. We can't just deport U.S. citizens. It doesn't work that way. The federal government has no authority to deport U.S. citizens, so she's an ignoramus. So let's take the example. Let's come down to earth and deal with reality. If you have two parents and two children, the children are born in the United States, they become citizens. Nobody knows how that happened either. They think, believe it or not, it started with the Social Security Administration in the late 50s, early 60s. But that's not in the Constitution. There's no federal statute that did that. It's just happened. The bureaucrats did it in these departments because it was more efficient. And so now, if individuals are born here, they become U.S. citizens, not by the Constitution. I mean, think about it. If you're an ambassador from Botswana and you come to the United States and you're female and you have a baby here, the child's still a citizen of Botswana. It's not automatically a citizen of the United States. But if people come here, and they come here illegally over the border, say somebody from Botswana, a woman, and she has a child here, that's a citizen based on what? Based on nothing. The Republicans tried to address this, and the Democrats said no. No, they don't want a lawful border. They want a lawless border, and that's what we have. So let's say it's two parents who are here illegally, and their children are here as U.S. citizens. The parents are subject to deportation. Now, they can take their children with them. They have custody of their children. Or they can go leave the country and try and come back in an orderly, legal way through a port of entry and apply for citizenship like everybody else. So it doesn't mean they're permanently apart or anything of the kind. And I'll tell you what's interesting, like it or not, the fact that they would have two citizen children here would make it more likely that they would qualify for coming into the United States. So none of this is as the Democrats want you to believe, but they created this situation. Biden, Harris, the Democrat Party, with the clapping seals at The View and the rest of the media. They created this situation. And now their answer to it is, we broke federal immigration law. We did all this. We want chain migration. We want massive amnesty. We want the fundamental transformation of the United States, its culture, its citizenship, and its constitution. We want it. So unless you do what we started, there's something wrong with you. You must be hateful. You must want to destroy families. Really? Tell me, Anna Navarro, in either language, why don't you ever talk about all those women sold into sex slavery? Women of color from all over the world. You like to boast that you're some kind of self-righteous, individual who's worried about human beings. You're not worried about anybody. In fact, you're as dumb as they come, like the rest of the Yentas on that stupid show. What about them? How come you've never talked about them? The 325,000 children that now the Trump administration has got to break their asses to try and locate. What about that? Is that humane?
Mark Levin.
Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
I've been doing this a little while, radio. Even before I had my own radio show, I worked very closely with Rush Limbaugh. He called me F. Lee Levin. Since about 1998, I would provide him with constitutional information, and we'd talk every day, every night. One of my closest best friends. And he would tell me that the media always wanted him to fail, and the media always wanted conservative talk radio to fail. So there were endless articles about how conservative talk radio was dying. Now, the truth is, conservative talk radio is the reason why an AM ban still exists, and in part an FM ban, that is terrestrial radio altogether. The truth is, there are certain program managers or general managers or regional managers or even owners who don't know what the hell they're doing. The vast majority do. And they kill their stations. But that's the exception. That's beside the point. We're very pleased to be with our affiliates here. But we're on every platform that's imaginable. But I bring this up to you for a reason, as I'll explain in a minute. Here's May 23, 2011 from the Business Insider. Rush Limbaugh's ratings have fallen 30% in the last 6 months. Salon, July 29, 2013, Rush Limbaugh's finished. Politico, May 24, 2016, is Rush Limbaugh in trouble? This is what he and I would discuss. EUR, Europe Web, Rush Limbaugh suffers ratings decline on talk radio, June 19, 2015. And it goes on and on and on. And we would get these from one after another. Huffington Post, 2012, a challenge to Rush, prove your ratings. Daily Beast, 2011. Rush Limbaugh and right-wing talk radio flame out. Politicus USA 2015, Rush Limbaugh in freefall as his show gets demoted. Adweek, ratings drop for Limbaugh. Media Matters 2014, Rush Limbaugh's California ratings debacle. New York Daily News, 2015, Rush Limbaugh might get smaller deal amid struggling ratings. See what I'm saying? Salon, a Marxist operation. Rush Limbaugh's cooked the stunning fall of the right's ratings. And it goes on. 2021, can conservative talk radio survive without Rush? Now, first of all, they said Rush couldn't survive. It goes on and on and on. Arkansas Business, 2014, talk radio on hold against low ratings. New York Daily News, 2015, Rush Limbaugh's ratings appear to be sagging. He was always under attack. Talk radio has always been under attack, and it's under attack again today. And they try and cause one platform or one industry to go after another, but it's not going to work. There are literally thousands of podcasters. All you need basically is a box, and you're a podcaster. There are, of course, podcasters who are massive, podcasters who are a blip. But there are also radio shows that are massive and radio shows that are a blip. This is one of the biggest in the world. This program, this platform, is on terrestrial radio, AM and FM, as well as podcasting and so forth and so on. And we will continue to be on all of our platforms without limitation, without exception. This is a syndicated program. And that's what we will do. And our audience expects it. You expect it. No matter how you listen to it. And I will not allow anybody to get into the way of that through demands of any kind whatsoever. It's not going to happen. Period. But I bring this up for a reason. In October of this year, Pew Research put out a very thorough and extensive survey of listeners of every single platform available. Network TV, cable TV, radio, podcasting, streaming, newspapers, magazines, websites. And they wrote about a third of Americans name NPR, which of course is government subsidized and on 1,000 stations, 34% as at least a minor source of election news. While 27%, it's almost 30% of all the people in the United States who gather information from any source. 27% use conservative talk radio such as Sean Hannity and Mark Levin. The share who cite talk radio as at least a minor source of election news is identical to 2020, when the question named Rush Limbaugh as an example before his death in 2021. Rush Limbaugh's ratings, his audience share, was always massive despite all the attacks. And conservative talk radio today remains massive. Massive. Just because they don't listen to it at Politico, just because they don't listen to it at Axios, including their media expert, they're as out of touch as they were before the election. They have no idea how you get information. You get information from TV, obviously. You get information from podcasts, many of you, particularly younger people. But millions and millions and millions of you get your communication and your information from radio, AM and FM radio, or a show like mine that simulcasts on other formats. I don't know why this is so hard to understand. It isn't. This constant war against conservative talk radio over the decades is intended to undermine it, to usurp it, because the left has nothing similar to it. Zero. They have podcasters. They have big podcasters. Joe Rogan isn't really a conservative. He endorsed Trump, but he also endorsed Bernie Sanders. But he's a great podcaster. And a lot of people listen to him. But that's not my point. My point is that this format, talk radio, is the number one format for conservative voices and listeners anywhere on the planet. It's bigger than any cable channel. It's bigger than any podcaster. It's bigger than any collection of podcasters. And look, I'm a podcaster too, and I love it. And we're going to do more of it. But I'm just speaking to you about the facts. The facts. These are the facts. So over at Axios, which is a very left-wing website, which doesn't know me, which doesn't know this format, which doesn't know anything, they're going through and they're telling you who the new influencers are. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Number one they have. Who's in? Number one. Number two, the organic media gurus. I don't even know what that means. Number three, independent streamers. Independent streamers have barely any audience, just so you know. But it's okay. I'm for all the competition in the world. I'm for taking down massive corporate media, which gives us the likes of Joy Reid. So I'm all for it. Free speech techies like Elon Musk. But you've got to talk about the platforms and the formats. Conservative entertainers. All good. The New York Post and Fox News. I happen to love both of them. Who's out? Fringe websites. Breitbart. Breitbart's not out. Breitbart's massive, and they throw them in with InfoWars. Breitbart's not InfoWars. Newsmax. Newsmax is doing very, very well. Here you go. Number two, Republican radio. There is no Republican radio. What does that mean? It's called conservative talk radio. So the person who wrote this is an imbecile. Republican radio, a slew of conservative radio hosts such as Dana Loesch, Eric Erickson, and Mark Levin, who've tried to fill the void left by the late Rush Limbaugh, don't have the same access and viral prowess as the New Age MAGA podcasters. So I just read you what they were doing to Rush before his death. Demeaning him, trying to minimize him, tell you that his days are over as a radio host, that he didn't have an audience, which was a lie. I can't speak for the other two, but I have never tried to replace Rush Limbaugh. My hero, my friend, an iconic, historic figure. I do my own thing. And I've been doing my own thing, how long now, Rich? 24 years, I guess? About 24 years. So why would I try to replace Rush Limbaugh? But the point is, conservative talk radio has as big of an audience, which is about 30% of the American people who are seeking information and news and so forth and commentary, as it did 4 years ago. 4 years ago. In 2020. So the idea that we're out, I can tell you right now, we've had more requests we did during the Trump campaign for their surrogates, for the president, and others to come on this show than I can even count. And same with the Senate candidates and congressional candidates. I couldn't take them all. I just couldn't. We tried very hard in the last 2 weeks to bring on as many as we could, including the president, including the vice president-elect. Because here's the little dirty secret. In virtually every single vehicle in this country, there's a radio. It doesn't mean all of you use a radio, but there it is. And some of the biggest podcasters in the country, they all want to be on radio. Why? Because it's a massive built-in audience that exists in every car, on every radio. That doesn't mean that massive built-in audience is necessarily going to listen to a particular radio host or not. That's not my point. My point is to ignore that, like Axios does, and some of these other lefties who wrote all these things about Rush and so forth, is to show a level of ignorance that's just unbelievable. President Trump as a candidate was all over conservative talk radio. He understood it. President Trump is a private citizen, is a New Yorker. And he would listen to this show, and he'd listen to Rush show, and he'd listen to Hannity's show. We would listen to these shows. Matter of fact, on WABC, that was called Murderer's Row. It was Rush, Hannity, Levin, in that order. Murderer's Row. which obviously Rush has passed away and Sean's with a different network than I am. It is what it is. But I want to point this out because the effort is to diminish you, the radio listener. That's what it is. That's what it is. And when you look again, as I explain, I have to explain this because I want you folks to understand you're part of a massive movement, and you always have been. There's nothing like conservative talk radio. Nothing. Zero. It is huge. It is massive in the aggregate. We reach hundreds of millions of people every single day. Every single day. And on a weekly basis, this show reaches almost 15 million people. Could be more. We just don't know. Plus, we're on all these other platforms, so it's impossible to really know. But what I do know, it's very interesting, Mr. Producer. I think I've told you, maybe not. I don't think I've told the audience. When I'm in the line, as an example, to get a ticket for an airplane or to get something to eat or something like that, and I open my mouth and people hear this voice, which is obviously a distinct voice. They go, "Are you Mark Levin?" I say, "Yes, I am." Is that good or is that bad? You friend or foe? 98% of the time, friend. So ignore these left-wing sites that are going to try and diminish this format, like Axios, like all the others have done in the past. This guy Avalon, who ran as a Democrat for Congress and lost in New York, he was one of the ones, the no-label party, but then he found a label. He became a Democrat. He was a Republican. He worked for Giuliani. The guy's been all over the place. He used to write these pieces talking about Rush can't survive, Rush's numbers are down, and on and on and on. I just want to assure you, we're strong as ever. Period.
Mark Levin.
You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
I'll tell you some of the appointments I like the best. Hegseth at Defense. So he comes under attack because, you know, he's not an old bureaucrat general who's failed at something. He's not a leftist of the sort that Obama might select. Hadn't been hanging around Washington, D.C. like so many of these people they select to head the Pentagon and so forth. Hegseth's smarter than I don't know how many secretaries of defense. The man is a combat veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan. He wrote a book. We had him on the program. I believe it went to #1. A brilliant book on the Pentagon, the military, the wokeism, and what needs to be fixed. He's a young man. It's a good thing. Does everybody have to be 87 years old in Washington, D.C.? He's a young man, and I think he'll attract more recruits, especially when they wring out all that woke DEI crap out of the Pentagon. He's going to have a hell of a job on his hand. It's a massive bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. I'm not talking about the foot soldiers. I'm talking about the bureaucracy. And he's going to need all of our support and all the help he can get, and he's got it from me. There's no question about it. And please don't harass him with, the never wars, don't get into wars. Like we're the warmongers. It drives me nuts, these people on TV and radio. Hegseth will use his head. He's smart. He knows how to avoid wars, but on the other hand, he knows at times you got to do what you got to do. Tom Homan, a genius choice as the border czar. President's not afraid to have a border czar. He wants that border secure. He wants to begin deportation of criminals and others. And then more massive deportation, as Eisenhower did. And, of course, the Democrats and the media are opposed to it because they created the debacle that we have on the border and in this country with 21 at least million illegal immigrants. Now they're worried about money, the spending of money. Can you imagine Democrats worried about debt and money? It'll cost us how much? I don't know. How much does chain migration cost us? How much? What does chain migration cost us? When all these illegal aliens have children or They become U.S. citizens, and then they each bring in 20 different people. What will that cost us? And what is it costing our schools now and law enforcement now, our communities now? Look at New York. Look at Chicago. Look all over the country. It's enormous. I don't want to hear about that. And, of course, they never talk about the sex slavery or the missing 325,000 unaccompanied minors. They never talk about any of it because they don't give a damn. John Ratcliffe, brilliant choice, CIA director. He's got the background, he's got the smarts, he's got the courage. Elise Stefanik, ambassador to the United Nations. She's going to be absolutely outstanding. No question about it. Michael Waltz, you've seen him on Fox. This guy is just perfect for a national security advisor. My family and I have gotten to know him, as we have Pete Hegseth. My wife's known him for years, even before he was popular and well-known. He's just terrific. We've gotten to know Elise Stefanik. She's fantastic. Who else? Huckabee is going to be a great ambassador to the State of Israel. A great ambassador to the State of Israel. He's a very decent man, too, by the way. A very, very kind man. And he was an outstanding governor. Lee Zeldin over at EPA. That's a rat's nest over at EPA. Don't let anybody fool you. It's ground zero for the degrowth movement, the climate change movement, all the nut jobs. And all the regulations intended to destroy your lifestyle and destroy our economy. He's going to have his hands full. Lee Zeldin is a real class act. Class act. My family and I know him quite well, too. Musk and Ramaswamy, Office of Government Efficiency. Can you think of a better tag team than that to handle that? I can't. Who even would have thought of a department like that or an office like that under the Democrats? Nobody. And there are others, too, but these are people I know and admire, either very close friends or acquaintances. In the case of Musk, I don't know him at all. Ramaswamy, we don't know each other that well, but he's a good man. These people will do the right thing. So of the no's that have been named so far that I can think of off the top of my head, these are the stellar appointees, and the president deserves our full support for all his appointees. Right now he does, because he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to do the right thing, and he's going to come to a headwind. They're not going to just sit back. First, they'll try and start picking off a couple of these guys and gals. They're going to try and undermine the House, which is a very, very tight majority. And by the way, that's not Mike Johnson's fault. We talked about this. The census got it wrong. There should be 9 more Republicans in the House. 9 more. Just by the census screwing up. Just by the census screwing up. But I think this is, we have to be very optimistic, certainly going into this. We're going to have fantastic Thanksgiving. Aren't you, Mr. Producer? The Democrats, their face is going to, drop into their stuffing and into the mashed potatoes. Oh, my God. Okay, great. But it'll be a very good Thanksgiving. I suppose if we lost, it would have been a horrendous Thanksgiving. We have some great staff appointments, too, around the President of the United States. Smart people, loyal people, who are going to be absolutely outstanding, who are outstanding. And let's see here. Let me see. There's a list of them. Just bear with me. I know a few of them, and I know them to be great. Dan Scavino. This guy is just fantastic. A real sweetheart, too. So loyal to the president. Been a big fan of this radio show even before he went into the White House the first time. But he's been with President Trump forever. Stephen Miller. Is there a better person than Stephen Miller? Of course, they're going to make him out to be something he's not. They do that to all of us, so ignore these ratfinks. American First Legal, my wife has been working over there. What a fantastic group, a fantastic team. But even more than that, he's a great guy, worked on Capitol Hill. He used to keep in touch with this program, didn't he, Mr. Producer? He's a longtime patriot. So he and Dan, I don't really know the others, but I know them, and they are great. And there's going to be more. There's going to be more. President met with Joe Biden today for 2 hours. I don't know how he did it, meaning President Trump. By all accounts from the president himself, it went pretty well. By all accounts, it went pretty well. I'm sure it did. I have to laugh. I mean, what would Biden say for 2 hours? You know, President Trump probably had to do most of the talking, right? I got to believe that. And of course, when it came to the public shaking of the hands and chit-chatting and so forth, the fact of the matter is they scooted the press out there as fast as they could, because that's what they do. That's what they have to do. We've got a ton more news and much more news here, and we're going to have 2 great shows this week, and I can tell you already. Saturday night show. By the way, Saturday night, last night, we won the whole day on all cable news. We had massive ratings, well over 2 million. I mean, this is what network TV gets. This is what Meet the Press does not get. These Sunday shows don't get. Saturday, despite college football and everything else on, the #1 show. Sunday, we're in the teeth of... Here's what happens on Sunday. Sunday night football begins, the kickoff begins at 8:20 p.m. Well, my show begins at 8 p.m. And so we're right in the middle of that. And Sunday night football, according to the people I've talked to at Fox, is hotter now than it's ever been in a decade or two. And yet we still get huge ratings because of you. I want them to be bigger, but they're still huge because of you. So we're right in the teeth of Sunday night football. It's just like this program on radio, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We're right in the teeth of all sports, all of it. Dinner time. Little league activities, 6 to 9 p.m., right? That's family time, Eastern. And yet here you are. We crush the competition in every single city, and that would include New York. The other time slots, they don't go up against sports as regularly as we do. We looked at this. I'm on 20 nights a week, right? And what was it that they determined, Mr. Producer? During the height of sports, like the Mets and the Yankees and so forth and so on, when we're up against baseball, just as an example, we've done an analysis of this. 17 nights out of 20 nights, we're up against baseball. Did you know that, Mr. Producer? It's amazing. And again, in addition to everything else that might be on TV or happening at your dinner table and so forth, this is Eastern time. And yet there we are, crushing our competition across the street. Now, there was a time when I was asked many years ago if I wanted to do noon to 3. And this was ABC radio networks. I said, I'm not going to do noon to 3. I'd be going up against my buddy Rush Limbaugh. Now, how many hosts do that, Mr. Producer, who are so loyal that they won't do something like that? Me. That's it. And boy, they offered me a boatload of money. I said, absolutely not. Then a few years later, they said to me, Mark, how would you like to go up 3 to 6 p.m. against my dear friend Sean Hannity? Now, these are people who helped me get into radio, but they don't care. Not them, the companies at the time. And they offered me a freighter full of money. I said no. I would never do that to Sean. So here I am, 6 to 9. And they've tried everything, 6 to 9. WABC, before I was there, they tried everyone and everything. Every age group. They tried, double hosts. I can't even think of everything. They tried names. If I gave you, you'd be familiar with them, especially in New York. They weren't cutting it. And then I come in and I do what I do. Because it's a very, very tough time slot. It just is what it is. And it's thanks to you folks in the audience. Sometimes radio companies don't get it. They don't get the relationship between a host and their audience. Think they can just drop somebody else in. It doesn't work that way. It'll never work that way. When we come back, I want you to hear a little bit about what the president told the New York Post about his discussion with Biden. Don't you love Melania Trump? Don't you love her? She won't sit down for tea with Jill Biden. Excuse me, Dr. Jill, more like Dr. Jekyll, but it doesn't really matter. She says, wait a minute, you sent a SWAT team into my home. You went through my belongings. I'm not sitting down and having tea with Joe Biden. I've got other things to do. That's the way my wife would react. That's the way I would react too. It's amazing how magnanimous President Trump was today. Truly, he was magnanimous. Melania had a damn good point. I kind of agree with her.
Mark Levin.
The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Remember the leak situation? The leak of the Israeli military plan to attack Iran? Well, it appears, reportedly, they found the culprit. New York Post, CIA official. With top-secret security clearance charged for leaking highly classified documents about Israel's plan to strike Iran. A CIA official has been charged with leaking highly classified U.S. intelligence information about Israel's potential plan to retaliate against Iran for a missile strike earlier this year. They showed a photo of this guy. He looks like he's in his 50s, if not his 60s. Asif W. Rahman. Got that, Mr. Producer? Asif W. Rahman, who worked overseas for the agency and held a top-secret security clearance, was arrested by the FBI in Cambodia on Tuesday and indicted under the Espionage Act, the New York Times reported. His arrest comes after the top-secret material started circulating online last month, detailing Israel's apparent intention to hit back at Iran after the country launched a barrage of missiles back on October 1st. The files, which were prepared by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, in other words, our satellites, in part detailed satellite imagery tied to the potential Israeli strike, as well as the various kinds of missiles on hand. They were posted by a Telegram account called Middle East Spectator. Retired Israeli Defense Forces Brigadier General Amir Avivi warned that the leak could have repercussions on Israel-U.S. relations, as the Jewish state places great trust in America when it shares its plans. Now, the top-secret files were only meant to be seen by those with proper clearance in the U.S. and other members of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, as they call them, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United States. Retired four-star general, a dear friend, Jack Keane, a former U.S. Army Vice Chief of Staff, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, said it was outrageous that a government employee with high clearance was behind the leak. He said the leak had a minimal impact as it didn't reveal key aspects of the operation Israel went through on October 27, because Israel changed its position. It was still serious nonetheless. Now we've actually caught the guy, he told the Post. It serves as a deterrent for future government leaks. Now, the Middle East Spectator said it had received the documents through an anonymous source and that it had no connection to the original leaker, nor could it verify the authenticity of the documents. But the FBI revealed last month that it was probing the source of the leak, and they found the guy. The indictment doesn't provide exact details. Well, of course it doesn't, because they don't want to make them public twice. And so here you have it. There's the photo of the guy. Actually, it's not the guy. It's the CIA Director, William Burns. Well, he looks kind of squirrely anyway. And as a footnote, I guess Christopher Wray's days are numbered. That guy needs to go. He really needs to go. He is your bureaucratic mess. I worked with a lot of top FBI guys when I was at the Department of Justice for several years. They were the best. They were the absolute best. They were sharp. They were loyal. They were patriotic. They wanted to do the right thing, and they did do the right thing. You know, Comey kind of bastardized the place. Wray has done really nothing to fix it, in my humble opinion. Very little. Anyway, I mentioned, President talks about how he weaves. I think I have to weave too. I always circle back. Senator John Thune at a press conference today. The new Republican majority leader in the Senate. Cut 4, Mr. Producer, go.
It's a new day in the United States Senate, and it's a new day in America. The American people have loudly rejected the failed policies of the Biden, Harris, Schumer agenda. And this Republican team is united. We are on one team. We are excited to reclaim the majority and to get to work with our colleagues in the House to enact President Trump's agenda. We have a mandate from the American people. A mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities. We will make sure that the President and his team have the tools and the support that they need to enforce border security laws and to remove the violent criminals who are wreaking havoc in every one of our states. We will work to make America prosperous again by streamlining the bureaucratic machine and overturning costly Biden-Harris regulations. And we will work to restore American energy dominance. Not just our energy security, but energy dominance, which will lower costs and bolster our national security.
Thune is more conservative than Cornyn. There's no question about it. He spent an awful lot of time, though, at the foot of Mitch McConnell, but he's more conservative than Cornyn. Cornyn was the worst. And I want to salute Senator Scott, who has the guts, has the courage to try and take the system on, and he did. And we congratulate him for the effort. A lot of people do. They don't take those steps. They're all talk. But he's not all talk. He's an excellent senator, too. More on John Thune. He's taking a question. Cut 5, Mr. Producer, go.
Leader Thune, you've said that recess appointments are on the table. That's a key demand from President-elect Donald Trump. Will you move forward with that?
Well, what we're going to do is make sure that we are processing his nominees in a way that gets them into those positions so they can implement his agenda. How that happens remains to be seen. Obviously, we want to make sure our committees have confirmation hearings like they typically do, and that these nominees reported out to the floor. But I've said this, and I mean it, that we expect a level of cooperation from the Democrats to work with us to get these folks installed. And obviously, we're going to look at explore all options to make sure that they get moved and that they get moved quickly.
Excellent. And that's what the president asked for. Look, he's got to staff these departments. If you don't have a loyal cabinet secretary, administrator running these departments, they run wild. And when they run wild, they advance the cause of the Democrat Party and the Marxist jihadists. That's what they do. And so they got to get through. Now, it is interesting to me that the one nominee who the Democrats are slobbering all over, have you noticed this, Mr. Producer? Marco Rubio. Fetterman comes out. The most left-wing Democrats are coming out. Yeah, we like Rubio. We're going to support Rubio. So he has spent a lot of time working both sides of the aisle. That's pretty clear. And that's to his credit, of course. But the Democrats, almost to a man and a woman and a transitioning individual, they love him. They love him. We haven't heard much from him here on the Mark Levin Show, but they love him. So there is that. And he'll be running the State Department. That's going to require a very strong hand. Now, Chris Van Hollen has thrown in with the jihadists. He's an Israel hater. In my view, he's an anti-Semite. My opinion. His wife is a radical kook. I've been told by other senators up there, a radical kook, anti-Israeli. And so he's demonstrating that. And the people from Maryland, you ought to wake up to the fact that this guy has got the skin tone of mashed potatoes. I just say that to point it out because, we want to get into all the racial stuff because that's the nature of the beast today, isn't it? Oh, yes. Well, it is. Anyway, so Chris Van Hollen, who's actually translucent. Let me put it that way. Is that better, Mr. Producer? I say that because people say, who's Chris Holland? He's the guy who's walking down the hall where you can actually see through him. Chris Van Hollen on MSLSD today about Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee, a great American patriot, a great supporter of the Holy Land, and that's what bothers Chris Van Hollen and his wife. Cut 8, go.
I wanted to ask you about Mike Huckabee's appointment.
Now that's Andrea Mitchell, who's a has-been and has always wanted to be a wannabe. And we can only hope that MSLSD, with Comcast actually calling the shots, will finally broom her. But I don't know. Send her the way of Chris Wallace and the other old dinosaurs. But she looks like she's going to hang on to the bitter end. More and more, she looks like Nancy Pelosi. Go ahead.
To be ambassador to Israel, not appointment, I should say, him being chosen, he has to be confirmed, and you would be one of those voting on this. He has said that Palestinians have no right to the land.
She's a lower voice than I do, doesn't she, Mr. Producer? Ooh. Go ahead.
They just happen to live there. He's also talking about the possibility of annexing the West Bank, which would...
Look how she's attacking this man. Just look. Look how she's attacking him. Now, let's be clear. Let's use plain English. There is no West Bank. The Jordanians took Judea and Samaria from the Jews, 1948. West Bank means the West Bank of Jordan. West Bank, since 1940, there's no West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. Why does Andrea Mitchell refuse to call Judea and Samaria by their actual historic and modern names? They're Judea and Samaria. And as I've said over and over and over again, there are no settlers in Judea and Samaria. The Jews are the indigenous peoples, any more than you would call Native Americans on various reservations in this country settlers on occupied territory. It is this constant anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, anti-Israel propaganda coming out of her big mouth, as well as the big mouths of the rest of the media. There is no West Bank of Jordan. There was Transjordan. That's it. It's a concoction. It's a creation. There was no monarchy. Look it up. Check your Bible. That's a concoction. That's a creation. That's what it is. There is no Jordan. Not a modern-day Jordan. It was created. Judea and Samaria weren't created by man. They were created by God. Go ahead.
All of these UN resolutions, Camp David, the two-state solution. What is your reaction?
Now, she just throws that against the wall because she's good at throwing you-know-what against the wall. The Camp David, the two states. What are you mumbling about? There's no two-state solution. Camp David didn't accomplish anything. So what the hell are you talking about? And she's throwing this at Van Hollen because Van Hollen is a bigot. She knows what she's doing. It's She invites him on. She feeds him his red meat, and he chews on it like a Doberman of the anti-Semitic left. Go ahead.
Evangelical Christian.
Wait a minute. Huckabee's an evangelical Christian. Oh, now we got to really oppose it. Let's get an evangelical Christian who supports the Israelis in the Holy Land. He's got to go. He's got to go. No, Mitchell, you need to go. You've been around like a bad inner thigh rash forever. You're not a journalist. You're a putz. Go ahead.
Strong religious views about this based in the Bible.
Wait a minute. He has religious views based on the Bible. Don't tell me these people aren't bigots. They are bigots. They hate Jews, especially Orthodox Jews, and they hate evangelical Christians or practicing faithful Catholics. They hate you. And there she is on MSNBC, given a format. Been given a format for at least 412 years. Look at her. Listen to her. What do you think about that, Chris Van Hollen? No, wait. So she feeds this guy softball after softball. Let's listen in, shall we? Go ahead.
And I definitely have the concerns that you just laid out here. It will be an interesting
she's a journalist. She has concerns? Oh, I thought she was asking an objective question. Go ahead.
Senate Foreign Relations Committee when we get to that point, because anybody who knows the Middle East recognizes that the best long-term solution to guarantee both Israel's security and the dignity and...
Shut up, you idiot. The two-state solution. Two-state solution. This moron, still with the two-state solution, the two-state solution. Israel, just give up your indigenous homeland. You know, Judea and Samaria. Well, literally, the tribes of Israel came together and the Jewish faith was born. Yeah, just give it up. To whom? Oh, the Palestinians. The peaceful Palestinians. And that'll bring us peace, says Van Hollen. That jerk, as he sits his fat ass in his mansion in Bethesda, Maryland.
Mark Levin.
we're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
Tonight I want to talk about a dear friend, a big in this business, radio, and even beyond, a man who strongly believes in the conservative cause and in this country. And the reports in the news about our friend Dennis Prager, that he fell in the shower and hurt his back. I am not at liberty to expand beyond that, other than to say, if you're a person of faith, I would encourage you to pray for Dennis Prager. It was a terrible, terrible accident. I'll put it to you that way. So please do. He's a great patriot and a human being. This is not a statement that he's passing or anything like that. I'm just saying it was a terrible, terrible accident. So let's say our prayers and wish he and his wife and his family all the best here. Just Prager University, that is such a tremendous platform, and he created it. And if you've ever heard him speak, you know, the folks in LA, of course, and other cities that hear Dennis, they know how brilliant he is. But in person, he's even more brilliant. He's a good guy. He's a great guy. So I just wanted to pass that on. I want to elaborate on this issue of the president's selections for the cabinet. I'm not a fan of all of them, but I don't care. I want you to listen carefully to me. This is important. He's elected president of the United States, not me, not any senator. They have an advise and consent role. There's no question about it. But I would remind those Republicans in the Senate who are going to be in the majority, who would not be in a majority but for Donald Trump's coattails, for the red wave. The Democrats would. And I'm also convinced he's the only Republican candidate who would have won the presidency under these circumstances. Not the reverse of what everybody said, he's the only one who couldn't win. No, he's the only one who could win, and he won in a landslide. And he won with a coalition of voters that nobody ever really thought was possible. And so while I may have issues with one nominee here or there, another one here or there, so what? They should bundle them up after they have their hearings. The Republicans should vote each one of them through, have an up or down vote, a roll call vote on the floor of the Senate, and give the president the team that he wants and he feels he needs. This shouldn't shock anybody what I'm saying. Again, it doesn't mean I'm a pom-pom boy for every single one of them. That's irrelevant. This is the team he wants. This is the team he feels he needs. It's the team he should get. And if down the road something goes off the rail with one nominee or another in terms of their service as a cabinet secretary, then they deal with it. But he's made these decisions after getting support from the voters. Many of the individuals in the Senate, Republicans included, who are objecting, did not face the voters this election cycle. Remember, 2/3 of the Senate is not up for election. And I look at them and putting aside every one of the nominees, and I think to myself, you dumb bastards created this problem. You did nothing to secure the border except run your mouth. You did nothing to bring down inflation except run your mouth. You did nothing to fund and support a United States military where its funds and weapons are being depleted. They can't meet its recruitment goals. And all you do is run your mouth. Our schools aren't teaching the basics anymore. They're teaching pornography. And all you do is run your mouth. We've got the enemy funding our universities and protests in our street. And all you do is run your mouth. We've got anti-Semitism in this country like we've never seen before, and all you do is run your mouth. It's not too much to get behind this president, given what he's been through, given everything he put on the line, his life, his family, his business. And to say as a senator, you know, for once I'm going to shut my damn big mouth. I'm going to get behind this man. If he wants Ernie Grabowski as Attorney General, so be it. If he wants somebody else as this, that, so be it. I'm going to give him the vote to give him the team that he wants. That's what I'm going to do. Even though I have issues with this one or I have issues with that one, I don't think it was a good choice, so be it. So be it. The Democrats never conduct themselves this way. They don't say, look at that tampon Tim, he's the biggest a-hole in politics. No, they rally behind the guy. Kamala Harris is utterly unqualified to be president. There is nothing that recommends her to be even vice president. They rally behind her. Our guys, right out of the box, they're running for the hills. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of it. You can tell the president privately what you think. That guy's a goofball. That woman is way out of line. That's fine. But this is the team he wants. It's the team he ought to get. And over time, he'll either be right or wrong about a particular cabinet official or administrator. It happens. It happens. So that's my view. I've gotten calls today, oh my God, he picks this one, he picks that one, and so forth. I don't have a lot in common with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but I'm not president. I'm just being honest with you. Give the guy a break, Trump. Give him a break. Get off his ass. Just once. Get off his back. And let's see what he can do, which is a lot. Which is a ton. Now, these Republicans in the Senate, they're going to be chairman of committees. They're going to be chairman of subcommittees. No thanks to them. Thanks to Trump. Are they going to use those positions now to sabotage him? I don't care what Susan Collins thinks and Lisa Murkowski. These are two loads. They're the weakest links in the chain. They just always are. Right out of the box. Because they're self-aggrandizers. They only care about themselves and their own politics. That's all they care about. And, of course, the media run to them, get their opinion, and they're just fantastic, you know. But that's the team he wants. That's the team he ought to get. We wouldn't have the House of Representatives today. We wouldn't have the Senate today. We wouldn't have the presidency today but for Donald Trump. So many of these political hacks, they're just ingrates, absolute ingrates. I heard this Republican from North Dakota, I don't even know who the hell he is, smirking about how he's going to vote against this one or the other one and so forth. He wasn't up for re-election. He didn't have to face the voters. They always claim how conservative they are when they run. They always claim how loyal they are. They're fealty. They always talk about it. As soon as they get to Washington, they go rogue. They go rogue. Now they control all the elected branches in Washington. Both houses of Congress and the presidency. The Democrats, as I speak, are in the dark. They're under the radar, plotting to destroy Donald Trump and his presidency, plotting to undermine the majority in the House and the Senate. That's who they are. That's what they're doing. Out in the open, brazenly, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, one of the big counties that's still counting, the 3 commissioners voted to count illegal votes just now. And I posted it if you want to check it out on all my social sites. They just voted to count all these ballots. that violate state law and violate a court order. They basically said, screw you, that's how we're voting. Media's not covering it. Cable's not covering it. The networks aren't covering it. Whatever happened to accepting an election? Whatever happened to the peaceful transition of power? Bob Casey lost. They have this slip and fall bastard lawyer by the name of Mark Elias, a real scumball, who's in there doing his thing with Democrats, more than happy to deliver. Nobody's going to be charged with any kind of federal offense. Not out of Washington, D.C. Nobody's going to be charged with obstructing an election. Only Trump gets charged. But that's exactly what they're doing in Pennsylvania. You clowns in the media, you lying thugs in the media. Are we going to accept the results of the election? Is Chuck Schumer going to accept it? Are the Democrats in Pennsylvania going to accept it? Is Mark Elias going to accept it? You clowns, you frauds on the Sunday shows, you make me sick to my stomach. As they try and steal a Senate race in Pennsylvania from David McCormick, they hand it to Bob Casey. And you folks in Pennsylvania, you ought to be furious. Furious. And those commissioners in Bucks County, when this is over, they ought to be prosecuted and go to jail for not following the law. Prosecuted and go to jail. That's what ought to happen.